Hello, Pokemon and tabletop friends and players. My name is Lance. I'm going to be making a quick tutorial on this little tabletop system for Pokemon called Pokemon Tabletop Adventures 3. First, before I get started, thank you. Huge shout outs to Dr. Mr. Stark. He is the mastermind behind the entire thing. He's brought a lot of people together to help put this together, and it has been awesome to see it grow over the past year since I've become aware of this. After playing it for a while, I feel comfortable enough with the rules that I'm going to try to make a bit of a tutorial series here just to get people started. But this video is going to be, as you can probably tell from the title, all about character creation. Obviously, there's a few different things you need to know. Some people get a little confused during character creation, so let's get right into it. First off, you're going to go to page 6, where it has a titled section called Building Your Trainer. This is very important for understanding exactly what the process is going to look like. I'll go through it really quick just to hit on some of the major points. First, you're going to look at your stats. I'll get into that in just a sec. Classes is going to be the second thing you want to pick. You probably already have a general idea what you want your trainer to be by the time you get there once you've picked out your stats. Then you have your origins, sort of like backgrounds in D&D 5e if you're familiar with that. But otherwise, it's kind of where you're coming from, where they're coming from before their adventure starts. Were they a high class rich kid? Were they the 10-year-old trainer who's going out to take the world? Or were they just someone who studied Pokemon a lot in school and decided they were finally ready for their adventure? And finally, the biggest thing that we are all trying to get to at some point is choosing your first Pokemon. You're going to start with multiple Pokemon basically any time. This is mostly just so that you have several Pokemon right out the gate, so that if you run into something that you're maybe not quite good on a matchup with your first Pokemon, you can have your second one come in and maybe clean that up if you need to. Anyway, as I said, we're going to get into the stats. We're just going to scroll down here. It's pretty simple. There's an explanation right here for what each stat does. All of them are pretty self-explanatory. Attack is going to be your physical strength. All of the heavy lifting that's what that is going to be. Defense is your ability to take hits as well as being able to concentrate on things. Special attack is going to be how smart you are, how book smart you are specifically, as well as being able to talk to people and reason with them. There's special defense, which is going to be all about your perception, your wisdom, your street smarts, essentially, is how I like to word it. But it is also your force of personality. How loud are you? How present are you when you walk into a room? And then speed is going to be pretty obviously your dexterity, your flexibility, that kind of thing, moving around, how well you can do that. And obviously, you've got hit points. Humans are very different from Pokemon, where all humans are going to have 20 hit points to start. And then when they are completely down to 0, you are knocked unconscious. Just like in the games, you're not dead, you're just KO'd, knocked out. So you will not need to worry about death unless your GM decides to do that, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go on over to the modifiers. Modifiers are pretty simple. The only thing you really need to know is that it's going to be your stat divided by 2. And then if there's a decimal, just take the decimal off. All right, so there's a good chart up here to remember it by. 1 is going to be a 0 modifier. 2 and 3 is going to be 1. 4 and 5 is going to be 2, so on and so forth. Pretty easy to understand. Trainers' stat values are never going to really hit above 10. They're very rarely going to be able to do that, and usually it's temporary, so I would not really think about these all that often in the context of your trainers. That's going to be more useful for your Pokemon, all right? Next up, you've got your talent, which they're pretty simple to understand. They're your skills, what you're good at naturally, what you've practiced that to be good at, all that kind of thing. Anytime you have a talent in something in a stat check or a skill check, you're going to add a 2 to your d20 roll. If you have the opportunity to uh, take that same talent a second time, as it says right here, you're going to add +5 to your d20 rolls instead. um, it's very unlikely you're ever going to get to roll twice on them, but if you are, then you're going to take the higher one or the lower one, depending on what the DM or the move suggests that you're going to be doing. All right. Skill checks, like we were just saying, is going to be a d20 roll plus whatever modifier that you're going to be using for that. If you roll a d20 and you hit the 20, instead of automatically succeeding, which it probably is, right? Most of the time that's going to be success. But if you hit a natural 20 on a skill check, instead of automatically succeeding, you get to roll a second d20. So you'll get that 20 plus your modifier plus another d20. So you could roll up to 40, as it says right here. You could roll as high as 40, and it would be pretty hard to fail that check, obviously, but it's just a fun way to sort of change how you might be playing a tabletop system. All right. We're going down here to determining a trainer's stats. This is pretty simple. There's a few different ways to do it. I'll go over all three of them in a quick fashion, as quickly as I can at least. There's random stat assignment. This is one that I used to believe in, but I've since changed my stance on. But some people still like it. You're basically just going to roll 6d6. You're going to drop the lowest one. So, for example, if I rolled a 6, a 6, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 4, then I'm going to be dropping that 2, and I'm going to have those 2 6s, those 2 4s, and a 3 to build out my stats. All right. It also has another example right here. Alex rolled 66s. He got a 2, a 3, a 3, a 5, a 5, and a 6. So they're going to drop the 2, and then they're going to spread their stats however they would like to. All right. Whatever order you roll them in doesn't actually matter. If you want it to matter, that's up to you, but they don't have to matter. So this is how they decide to spread it out. You can see the modifiers right there, sort of a reminder of how that works. But that is the first way. The second way is going to be point assignment, all right? Point assignment is pretty easy. You have 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2 as your stats, and it's up to you to decide what order they go in. So right here you have Ray the Breeder, who decided to make their 6 and their 5 go into their 2 defensive stats, their 4 into attack, and then their 3 into speed, leaving the 2 for special attack. Pretty easy to understand, not much to really go by there. But speaking of buying, we have point buy. Point buy is a thing you're probably going to be used to from 5e if you're coming over from there. But outside of that, it's not uncommon, so you might have heard of it otherwise. Basically, the way it works is you're going to have 25 points, and anytime you want a stat total, you're going to spend a certain amount of points getting it. All right. So, for example, down here we have Katie and Caitlin, who are going for coordinators, both of them. They're doing it very differently, though. As you can see, Katie decides to spend 22 points on 2 6 values. So 6 is going to be valued at 11 points, which would leave her with 3 points left when building the rest of her character, which, as you might be able to figure out on your own, one stat value is a 1 point cost. So having those 3 left, she gets 2 6s and then 3 1s. So she's really going for that min-max effect on her character. Meanwhile, with Caitlin, she's going to spread it out a little bit more evenly. She's going to get 2 5 values. So that's going to be 16 points spent rather. And then she's going to spread that out evenly with the rest of her things. She'll have 9 left over, so she decides the best way to do that is going to be to grab a 4, a 2, and then a 1. She could have also gone with 3 threes with her 9 points left, but this is what she wanted to do, so Caitlin is going with that. All right. Pretty easy, pretty simple. Uh, Here's a bunch of what each different stat will be useful for in terms of skills. I won't go over each individual one, but you can see attack skills, defense skills, attack skills, special defense skills, and then speed skills. They're all pretty simple and easy to understand, some more than others. Some are going to be a little bit confusing, so if you ever have questions, feel free to check out the Discord actually that we have for the PTA 3 community. Dr. Mr. Stark has been kind enough to create this server so that people can share their experiences, talk about what they have, what they want to do, and just create a very fun community to be in. There's a lot of people in there, including myself, that are happy to answer any questions that we can while people are first playing through the game. And even if experienced players have questions, sometimes I'll pop in there with my own questions and people will be able to help me out. So it's a really great community in there. It's linked in this document right here, and this document is going to be in a link tree in the description below this video, so just feel free to go over there, join the server, get all of these books that we have available, and you'll be able to get started on your own PTA adventure. But now that we've gone over stats, it's time for us to go into a little bit of detail on what all the classes are going to be. So we're going to go to page 16. That's going to bring us over to the Ace Trainer class. All right. Before we get started on the Ace Trainer, though, I'm going to quickly describe to you some of the things you're going to want to keep an eye out for on each page. For starters, you're going to see just beneath that paragraph right there about the Ace Trainer, you're going to see favored stats. Those are the stats that each class is going to be wanting to be really high most of the time. The next one underneath that is going to be the advanced class options. Those are all going to be italicized. You'll have 5 options for each one. And then finally, we have the skill talents. Each class is going to have you pick 2 talents to be pretty good in, but there is going to be a decent array of options to you for each one. So just make sure you pick 2 of them, whatever works best for your character, you think, and you will be golden to be starting to play as that class. As you might be able to guess, Ace Trainers are masters of bringing out the strength of their Pokemon. They're always going to be wanting to fight, they're always going to be wanting to get the strongest Pokemon, become the strongest they can with their Pokemon, and they are always willing to throw down for a battle, alright? This is the kind of Pokemon trainer that Ash would be in the anime. It's pretty obvious what this is going for. Each class that you have available to has 5 advanced classes. I won't be going over those though. So if you are curious about that, I'll be putting out a video about that later down the line if I have enough interest. I'll go down each individual class and go through the advanced classes that all of them have. But for the second one, however, we're going to be going over to page 30, and we're going to be hitting up the breeder. This is what Brock ended up becoming, guys. This is all about raising Pokemon as effectively as you can to make them as healthy and happy as possible. They're going to be very fun characters if you're not looking to really focus on battling or coordinating or anything like that, but you just want to be there for the Pokemon. And this is a very fun one. There's a lot of different advanced class options that you have that are going to be really interesting to use. So check that out if you are interested in that. But speaking of coordinating, we have the coordinator next. Coordinator, as you might be able to assume, is going to be all about contests. There's a few different ways to go into the advanced classes. All of them are going to be mostly focused on contests. So this makes it one of the weaker ones in terms of game sense in general, but it is still a very fun class, especially if you are gunning to become a contest master. All right, so that's a good one if you want to become a May, a Dawn, something like that. Maybe a Serena, since she goes into contests later in her adventure. But we're going to move on to page 60, where we see our first really interesting one, in my opinion, the Ranger. Ranger is going to be a really fun one if you are a fan of those Ranger games that came out all those years ago. I know a lot of people love those games, and this is your chance to become a ranger yourself. There's a few different things you can advance class into from the ranger class, but some of them are only available to the ranger base class. So if you're interested in some of those advanced classes, it's easiest just to start as a ranger and get your ranger license. All right. Next up, and finally, we have the researcher. Researchers are going to be the people who are going to be most interested in finding out the most they can about Pokemon. They're all the scientists, all the weird uh, people who are a bit more obsessed with Pokemon than they probably should be, but we love them anyway. They have some really interesting abilities, and a lot of the advanced classes are super interesting. So feel free to take a look at them and see if that matches up what you want your character to be. Of course, there is still a few things left once you choose which base class you want to start with. Next, we're going to go to page 90, and we're going to talk about Pokemon Trainer Origins. Trainer Origins, like I said at the beginning of this video, is going to be all about what those trainers are coming from, what they did before they started their adventure. The biggest thing is going to be looking through all of them and seeing what you want your character to be in comparison to what these are. So we're going to look down here. There's a solid list of origins right here. There's more detail down below this page, but they all have a lifestyle. Lifestyle is pretty interesting, but it's mostly just going to be what kind of money you're coming on your adventure to start with. Most of the trainers are going to be modest to difficult, but you can see a few comfortable and a few wealthy. We'll get to what that special one means in the future, but for now, I want to go over what you're going to find in each background, alright? So, in each origin, you're going to find certain skills that you're going to be able to take. For example, the academic, this is the one I'm going to be using as an example, as this is the one I've used the most. I love this one personally, but it's not everyone's cup of tea, obviously. Anyway, you're going to choose three of these from this list. Not all of them are going to be three, some of them are going to be one, and then one required one. So, for example, the artist entertainer has perform. You're always going to have perform, but you get to choose one more out of this list right here. Academic, you get to pick three from this list. So, say you wanted to create the academic, maybe I want to go with history just so I have my knowledge of what happened around the world. Maybe I want to go with perception just so I'm not missing anything out of the corner of my eye. I'll be able to spot things a lot easier. And finally, maybe we'll go with investigation just to sort of round out my ability to parse through what is in front of me. All origins are going to have the lifestyle right there. We have the difficult lifestyle for the academic, but obviously not all of them are going to follow the same credits. For academic specifically, you're going to start with 12,500 credits. All right, so that's going to be a decent amount of credits to start with, but you're going to be grabbing more credits as you go through your adventure more than likely. So don't worry about starting slow with the money. It'll come to you eventually if you're doing the right things. You've got your starting equipment. All of them are going to be a little bit different, but this is what the academic starts with, obviously. And the most interesting one, the one you've been waiting for, is the Pokemon that you start with. All of them have something a little bit different, but the academic starts with one starter Pokemon. This is a Pokemon that is going to be one of the main starters of any of the games in the main series. So you've got your Kanto starters all the way up through your Paldean starters, as well as Pikachu and Eevee. Those are your options for that. You can negotiate with your GM about changing that if you don't want a starter, instead you want a different rare Pokemon. You might be able to convince your GM to do that. I've let one of my players do that before. So it's up to you and your GM to discuss that if the starting Pokemon list isn't exactly what you're hoping for. Additionally, with academic, though, you're going to get up to 2 common first stage pet Pokemon. What this means is that each Pokemon has a rarity. I sort of mentioned that starters were rare, so that means that you're going to be looking for one of those rare Pokemon, most likely a starter for the academic at the very least, but there's also common and uncommon. For the academic, you get 2 common Pokemon to start with. It says pet Pokemon doesn't. I'm not really sure that that means anything specific. Um, I usually just ignore that, but maybe ask your DM if that's going to matter, if you're going to specifically be looking for a Pokemon that is more centered around being at your family's house than a different Pokemon, like a Zubat. That's going to be a common Pokemon, but you maybe not going to want that in the house versus maybe a Lillipup that's going to be in the house pretty commonly. Additionally, all of the origins have one feature specific to them. This one, for academic, you have the academic specialty, which will allow you to roll twice and have the higher roll for certain things when talking about your specialty. This is going to be Pokemon League Leaders, Pokemon Biology, Pokemon Habitats, Pokemon Technology, and World History. You're going to be able to roll twice on one of those subjects for these talents right here, all right? Pick whatever works best for your character. That is going to be a wrap up on Origins. Now, there's just one final thing I want to go over before we start wrapping up this video, and that's going to be Pokemon creation. All right, so to create a Pokemon, you're going to go to 101 in the PHB, and that's going to bring you to this screen right here. You have a breakdown of what Pokemon look like for your character sheet. You've got the name, you've got a little type symbol right on the top right. You've got the type, the size, the weight, and then their stats followed by their skills. Pokemon have different skills depending on what they are able to do. Some are really good at sniffing things out, some are able to produce electricity, water, fire, ice, things like that. Others have the inability to perform well on land and will have difficulty moving on land. So keep an eye on your skills for your Pokemon, and that'll help you figure out what you're able to do. There's also passive, which is going to be stat boosts that are already baked into the stats. You've got your abilities like Lightning Rod here. You've got static right here for Pikachu specifically. Those are the different passives you're going to have. Just keep an eye on what you have. You can only have 3 stat boosting passives on a Pokemon, but you can potentially have unlimited amount of ability passives. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how to actually add them. Most of the time there's no way to add ability passives to a Pokemon, so I wouldn't worry about it, but there's some weird DMs out there that want to add their own passives to Pokemon and make it really fun to think about how you're going to do things. So just talk to your GM about that, and maybe you'll be able to create a Wonder Guard Pikachu. Who knows? Next up, you've got this bar right here. I've seen a lot of people ask about that before, but basically what that's going to be is that is going to be your modifiers for those types of moves. For attacking moves, you're going to be using a +3 because the Pikachu's attack stat is a 7, so it's going to be a modifier of 3. Same with the special attack, that's a +3 because the special attack stat is 6. Effect is going to be taken from your speed. That can be a little confusing if people didn't understand that, but effect moves are always going to be rolled accuracy with speed. So speed is a 9 for Pikachu, so that's going to be a +4, alright? Finally, you've got your moves over here. Pikachu has Quick Attack, Electro Ball, and Iron Tail. These are the moves that it has naturally, but they are not limited to these moves. There are ways to add moves to Pokemon. You can have 6 per Pokemon, so try to find ways to add them. There's a few different ways, but before we get to that, let's go through this biology real quick. For Pokemon's biology, you're going to have a few different things to keep in mind. There's the egg group, which is going to be what kind of Pokemon you can actually breed that Pokemon with. There's the hatch rate, which is going to be roughly how long you expect that egg to take to hatch. Some are going to be 4 days, some are going to be 10 days. It's dependent on the Pokemon itself, and then sometimes the GM will extend it or shorten it depending on other forces around it, all right? You've also got your diet. So some Pokemon are going to be herbivores, some are going to be carnivores, some are going to be omnivores, but some are going to be a little weird, eat electricity or eat minerals. Some don't need to eat, so keep an eye on that. Know how to best keep your Pokemon fed, all right? All Pokemon are going to be able to eat berries, so that's not a worry. If you have any of the special named berries from the series, you'll be able to feed your Pokemon that, and all of them will accept it, no questions asked. Outside of that, you're going to need to focus on what type of diet your Pokemon has for food, alright? And finally, habitats. This is where you're going to be finding your Pokemon generally. Some are going to be not in those places. Maybe they got separated from their families, but most of them are going to be focused directly in those places. So, for example, the Pikachu we're looking at, it's going to be found in forests and urban power plants. It's pretty easy to remember. Pikachu can be found in Viridian Forest, if you'll remember, and Pikachu makes sense to find in an urban power plant, you know? Next over here you have evolution. If you see this symbol right here, this black symbol in between Pichu and Pikachu, it means that that Pokemon can evolve at any time at the discretion of your DM. All right, it's pretty much up to them to decide the fate of your Pokemon's evolution. So there's not always going to be a way to control it. Sometimes you just need to throw an Everstone to stop them from evolving if you'd like, but sometimes it's just you're going to have to let your GM cook and figure out how to evolve your Pokemon. Pokemon always are going to be evolving in fun ways, hopefully. Sometimes they'll evolve in the middle of a battle, sometimes they'll evolve because they got their favorite thing. Sometimes they'll evolve to save you. It's really interesting how GMs can actually do that. So feel free to work with your GM about how your Pokemon will evolve. Sometimes, however, you will find that you will have control over your evolutions. For example, Pikachu can be evolved using a Thunderstone, but depending on where that Thunderstone is found, it'll change what Raichu it'll evolve into. If you find just an ordinary Thunderstone, you're going to go into normal Raichu, but if you find a Thunderstone from an island, it will evolve into the Alolan Raichu. That's what this little symbol means right here, this exclamation mark. That symbol means that there's a catch with whatever this evolution is. So, because there's a Thunderstone here, it's just a normal Thunderstone, but because there's a Thunderstone here with an exclamation part, it is a Thunderstone, but with an asterisk. It needs to be a specific Thunderstone, you know? Next up, you have move proficiencies, and this is the big thing that you want to think about in terms of learning new moves. Pikachu is able to learn from the electric proficiency list as well as the cutesy proficiency list, but the only Pokemon who can learn from the psychic proficiency list would be the Alolan Raichu, the Island Raichu. So just be sure you're keeping tabs on that. Some Pokemon are going to have those parentheses around next to their move proficiency list. That just means that only part of that evolution system can learn from that list. So just be careful that you're not pulling moves from the wrong lists, alright? They're all labeled and they're at the very end of the Pokedex. So check the Pokedex out at the proficiency list and figure out what moves you might want to learn for your Pokemon, alright? Once you have that, you're mostly set, but I do want to leave you with just one final note. There is leveling up for trainers, not for Pokemon though. Pokemon only get stronger by evolving or getting stronger moves. So focus on that instead of leveling up Pokemon because it's not possible here. But for trainers to level up, you're going to want to collect honors. Honors are a pretty loosely defined term in PTA. This is really just whatever your GM declares is going to be an honor. Some of them are pretty obvious. You've got ribbons, badges, you've got symbols, trial medals. Then you have a few other things. Pokedex filling will allow you to get a lot more honors quickly. For every 30 Pokemon caught, you'll get a recognition, and sometimes people will do with every 30 scanned as well. There's also recognition emblems. This is going to be pretty loosely defined, so just keep in contact with your GM about what you're going to be looking for with that. But to level up, you're going to have to collect several honors. So for the first level up, you're going to be collecting one. For the second level up, you're going to be collecting another one. Fourth, and one more. But when you get to level 5, you've had to collect 5 honors. So that's going to be 2 honors in between level 4 and level 5. Same thing for level 6, same thing for level 9, and then once you get to 8, you need 3 more honors from where you were at level 7. And that's going to just keep growing. You can see this whole list. That's just about everything you need to know for honor collecting. You can see here what rewards you'll get from being that level. You get 3 advanced classes or secondary base classes, and then 2 more advanced classes at level 3, 7, and 11, as well as a stat increase to whatever you were going to get. Alright, so you can do that for HP, but a lot of the time that's going to be a roll of D4, alright? But that's going to do it for this quick tutorial. It probably wasn't that quick, but I hope it was helpful enough. If you have any questions, like I said earlier, you can head on to the Discord for PTA 3. It'll help you learn everything you need to know for the game. We'll be able to figure it out and help you out there. But that's going to do it for me. I've been Lance. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this helps. Have a great rest of your day.